Welcome to the Enduring Minds podcast, part of the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. I'm your host, Evan Birch, and I'll be joined shortly by my co host, Jason Bahamundi. Enduring Minds is where we explore the intersection of mental health and endurance sports, while breaking the silence surrounding men's mental health, alongside those societal expectations and norms that discourage men from seeking help. We're here to have real, open, honest, and vulnerable conversations, creating a supportive space to share the struggles, victories, and everything in between that shapes who we are. So leave the shame, guilt, and fear at the door and join us for another episode of Enduring Minds. If you're new here, we are on our 8th episode. All previous episodes are on the Run Try Bike YouTube channel and on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network on your favorite podcast platform alongside 8 other incredible shows. Please subscribe, rate, review, and leave a comment as that helps us grow the podcast and be able to tell more incredible stories. Now let me bring Jason onto the show. Jason, welcome. How is everything in your world?
Good. Being able to talk to our guest in the back room has allowed me to remove the sweat from my forehead and palms a little bit.
Yeah, well, soon people will see that we're all in solidarity of 3 bald men today. Some by choice, some not by choice, and that's okay.
The beauty of our show, Enduring Minds, right, is open, vulnerable, honest, and going bald is something that a lot of men have difficulty with. And so having the three of us show up in solidarity like this is awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So now let's get into it. We're excited to be joined by Dezmond Douglas, Dezmond Taylor Douglas, or we call him Dez. I connected with Dez over the last year virtually through a shared love for running and our own personal growth stories that had us on similar paths, leaning into similar ideas and philosophies that have allowed us to connect beyond just running. Dez is a fierce community advocate, trail runner, cyclist, coach, and scientist. Dez is the definition of not letting one thing define who you are. He brings authenticity and heart to every space he steps into, from labs and boardrooms to trails and start lines and local run clubs. As a proud member of the LGBTQ plus community, he also champions inclusivity and connection in all of those spaces. With a PhD in physiology and biophysics, Dez made the leap from academia to industry, now using his deep experience in life sciences to guide others through career transitions as a strategist and mentor. But his coaching doesn't stop there. Dez is also a movement and mindset coach, blending his background in human physiology with his love for endurance sports to support both the body and the mind. His journey spans ultramarathons, trail adventures, long-distance cycling, and inclusive community building, often showing up not just as an athlete, but as a leader in local run crews and a voice for representation in sport. Whether it's mentoring scientists, creating sustainable movement plans, or training for his next 100K, Dez is all about showing up with purpose and helping others do the same. He believes in leaving people and places better than how we found them. Dez, welcome to Enduring Minds.
Hey, Evan and Jason, it's great to be here.
I hope I did you justice on that intro.
Oh man, I feel like I'm gonna have to have you intro me like every time that I step into a room. I felt like a little prize fighter. Thank you.
I'm gonna have to turn to Evan to write my bios from now on.
Who needs ChatGPT? I mean, when you have Evan.
That's true.
That's awesome.
So, we have a set of questions that Jason and I usually come up with. We write them down. We probably go through 2 of them, and then we just let the conversation flow. And sometimes we'll go back to them, but we usually just kind of like to open it up with an initial question. And so you've worn a lot of hats: scientist, coach, athlete, mentor. Where did your journey really begin, and what pulled you into movement and endurance sports in the first place?
That's a really good question. I'm gonna have to say this. So my parents told me that I actually ran before I walked. Little context there. So my mom and them had me when they were in high school. And with that, I was there. My mom was a runner in both high school and college, and my dad was a football player, and then he was in the military. So I wasn't really walking, and they used to have to do their workouts on the track. Then one day I just kind of started running, and then I just like to joke and say that I never stopped running at that point. So running was actually my first form of movement. And then I think from there, just because I'm a military brat and I've moved around, had multiple elementary schools, multiple middle schools, multiple high schools, I found that the way to actually connect with people was through sports. So that was basketball, marching band, cross country, indoor track, outdoor track. So all these things kind of led to me just always being on the move and moving.
One of the things that is in that sort of intro that made me inquisitive was the mentor side of it all. So, right, you get into endurance sports, and presumably like everybody else, you don't know what you're doing and you figure it out, and somebody else has helped you along the way. At what point does it turn for you where you're like, people have helped me, now I want to help people? And then does that go off the running course, shall we say?
Yeah, that's a multi-layered question. So I'm gonna phrase it a couple of different ways. So when I was running initially, I feel like I didn't really know what I was doing. And then when I got to high school and I had just started this new high school, I was at marching band camp, and then I saw a group of runners running by. They all looked like they were having so much fun. So I just said, "Hey, like, you mind if I go for like jump in on this run too?" And I did, and I learned that they were the cross country team. And when I got to the cross country team, they said, "Hey, like, you should come out to one of our practices." It was there that I had my first ever mentor. His name was JR. He's now passed away, but you could tell that he was the heart and soul of running. When you go to that running group and you see someone that shows up, whether it's rain or shine, and just exudes positivity, it was that person. And he just wanted everyone to feel included, no matter if you were really fast or if you were the back of the pack. He said that everybody had a place on the team. And then after, doing pretty well my first year of running, I got another coach, and this person, her name was Cara, also a really good mentor. And I think at this time, I was starting to see people who loved what they were doing, and these people started kind of instilling the seeds of kind of really enjoying movement and wanting to share that with everybody. Now, I guess I'll take this and I'll fast forward. These were all like beautiful moments in my running career, but in the background, there was a lot of really tough things happening for me. So, really, I feel like running is the thing that kind of kept me stable, and it was an anchor for me. And when I found that, when I kind of went through a period of not feeling like I had anything except for running, I got into this dark space. When I was in this dark space, I remember telling myself that, once I navigate this, I never want anyone to feel what I'm feeling. I want people to always feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not a train. I want people to be able to look at me and feel like they can approach me, they can ask for my help. So I'd say that that was the transition point for me, was just going through a dark period of time and, not having any choice except to climb up and to be myself and to present myself to the world, and to just be a person to say, "Hey, like, you're not alone. I'm here to help." I think that that's kind of the transition point.
I wrote down a couple of notes while you were talking because I too moved as a young kid. I'm Puerto Rican, grew up in the Bronx, and I went to school with Juans, Jose's, and Marias. And we moved to the suburbs, and all of a sudden I'm going to school with Tyler's, Kevin's, and Jennifer's. And it was a whole different world. And you painted this picture of having mentors that helped you, and it seemed like it was unicorns and rainbows until you mentioned the tough spots, right? And I'm wondering, When you moved to this new high school, how easy was it for you or difficult to blend in, fit in, get yourself involved outside of the running piece, like the academic side, the friendship side for those that weren't runners? Was that a difficult process for you?
Yes. So I'll say something. When I moved to Avon, Ohio is historically a farming community when I moved there. And they were turning farmlands into houses. And to my parents' credit, I think what they've always tried to do is to build up on the front end and say, we're trying to do as much as we can on the front end to give you as many opportunities to succeed. Now, was the execution of that always right? No, but I think in the moment, they're young parents. They're doing everything in their power, and moving to Avon, Ohio, and building their dream home was part of that. But as soon as I rolled up to that school, I saw pickup trucks, Confederate flags, like all types of stuff. And I think, you know, maybe at that time it was 1% other that lived in that town, and I was a part of that other. So coming in, I think, it felt like a bit like an alien kind of landing in the middle of a crop field and saying, "All right, we're here to join the masses." So initially, there's a little bit of pushback, but I think for me, the thing that made it easy was being a part of sports. I think that sports is one of the universal languages for everybody. So I think that that smoothed the path, but did it make it easy? No. I think that, there's always microaggressions. There's always people who are kind of looking at you and wondering, why you're there. And if you are, you know, if you're going to be as good as they are, or, if you're going to take opportunities away from them. So yeah, it was good. And it was also tough at the same time, a blend of experience there.
Yeah, bridging from those experiences into all of the things, and I'll say all the hands, all the honey pots you have your hands in between science and cycling and running and community work and all of these other pockets that you're a part of, coaching, mindset work. I would imagine that your experiences have been different in all of those areas. So I guess my question is where have you felt the most seen and where have you had to fight to be seen?
Mm. I felt the most seen as an athlete. I think, I've been able to navigate the world as an athlete pretty easily. I ran cross country and track in high school. I had the privilege of running national meets. I've gotten to travel all over the place, be coached by great people, be in the same rooms as a lot of people. But to be honest with you, in high school, and now I'm looking back as an adult, and if I had to talk back to the younger version of Des then, younger Des then was just going through the motions. I was on survival mode. I didn't know who I was. I I feel like I'm going to go back to kind of a saying that my dad had. When they had me in high school, they had to create a blueprint, and everybody needed to be on this blueprint to move forward as a family, because my successes were my family's successes. We were all growing at the same exact time. And I'm sure if anybody has any connection to the military, you know that things are orderly. Things are, there's a way to do things, there's an SOP. So I think in high school, I was just trying to be on the SOP. I was trying to run, I was trying to get the grades that I needed to get. So all of these things that I'm doing now, where it's like mindset and mentoring, I wasn't doing any of that in high school. And I had no idea that it was even possible to do what I'm doing, because I was on survival mode, very
I'm
much on survival mode.
I'm smiling because you're telling my story at the same time. Um,
Yeah.
I went to this new school and I blended in to survive, to get through the process. And it wasn't until about 4 or 5 years ago, Des, that I finally stood up and said, I am Puerto Rican and I belong here and I'm going to do these things. Because for so long, it was just trying to go with the flow, shall we say. And it was a strain that I didn't know I was carrying. And so, my question to you would be, how long before you recognize the I'm just going with the flow, the SOP, that you decided to take back your identity and say, this is Des, this is who I am, and this is how I'm going to do things. Haters be damned.
Yeah, that's a deep question. And the way to actually answer that is to say, I even have to kind of pinch myself when you say Des. You know, everyone in high school knows me as Desmond. And actually, when you said Evan, Desmond Douglas, everyone knows me as Desmond Douglas up until college. And to be honest, there was so many things going on with me in high school. You know, me questioning my identity, saying, am I gay or am I straight? I'm sitting around, the most people of color I'm around is my family. So yes, I identify as a black man, but when you're around everyone and you're trying to blend in, you're trying not to draw too much attention to yourself. So you're trying to act like your peers. So you're in this world where if you go back and you're around all black people, you're not black enough. But then when you're around a bunch of white people, you're, not white enough. All these different things. So you're in this world and it seems like you're kind of, yeah, going through the motions and same thing, I'm around all my friends. I don't want to draw too much attention to myself because just the connotation of even being gay was not received well because my family was heavily involved in the church. I was involved in the church. I'm around a bunch of my friends playing sports. They are making gay jokes. So, I'm just kind of going with the flow and not allowing myself to be anything other than what's going to allow me to blend in.
I dealt with the Hispanic jokes growing up as well. And the response when I would say to them is, you realize I'm Puerto Rican, right? They would say, yeah, but not you, right? Like they were telling the jokes, but not you. And I was like, I'm them.
Yep.
Which brings me to this point. Um, Puerto Ricans, we typically play baseball, right? That's the stereotype. With black athletes, right? Track and field or football or basketball. But you're a long distance runner, as am I.
Oh, but I played basketball. I started with some basketball. I
Yeah.
started with the sprints, but quickly realized, or at least my coaches realized, they were like, "Hey, we're gonna bench you because your true talent lies in running, and it's not in sprinting either because you're too slow. Everybody's eating you up here. You got that wind up speed." So they just kept pushing me into the distances until I hit 400, 800 mile, 2 mile, where I actually was good.
Yeah, and that leads to what I was going to get to, which was when I told my family that I was racing Ironman or I was doing a 100-mile race. Their statement literally was, "We don't do those things." And I'm like, "Who's this we? I'm actually doing it, right?" And I think that was also a big part of why I didn't talk about being Puerto Rican for so long, because the identity was not all-star shortstop at the major league level, right? It was, 5'6", 150-pound, 140-pound person running for hours on end or cycling for hours on end. As you started to get into the longer distances and running marathons and so on and so forth, and you're seeing less and less black people, was that a sign to you to stand up and say, you know what? I am out here and I want to get more black athletes out here as well?
Absolutely. It's coming from a weird place because I'm used to being basically the only black person in the room. If I look around, maybe there's a few. And I think because I'm so used to trailblazing or being in a spot where I'm one of the only ones, now that I'm actually feel like I'm authentically myself, I feel like I am able to speak up. And when someone reaches out to me that is black and says, "Hey, like, I also really like what you're saying. I also want to do some yoga. I also want to run on the trails. I'm like, all right, cool. Like what do we need to do to get you there? And it could be something as simple as like, I don't know what shoes to buy. I'd be like, all right, well, let's first get a gait analysis. Let's understand what type of trails you want to run on. Let's start on the trails that are going to get you excited. Let's start on some fire roads, like where, it feels good, a little bit of flowy trail or maybe a flat trail, and then let's build our way up. So I think now that I actually feel comfortable, in my own skin, I feel good about speaking up and I don't see my otherness as a weakness or a limitation or something that I need to hide behind.
Yeah, what I hear in what you're saying, Des, it's interesting. Like we can, and I've said it to Jason before, the uniqueness of our show and bringing on different guests. Like the three of us are all representing different things right now, but we all have challenged our identities, challenged our own mental health, and gone through similar struggles. Our stories are vastly different, but we have all likely felt the same thing. So for recreating your identity, because that's what it sounds like you went through, was having to really establish like what that was for you. Um, how did you rebuild your identity? I mean, you and I have connected on a lot of things, but I would just love to hear from your perspective. Obviously, with culture, with you representing all of these different groups and being the only one sometimes in these groups, in these run clubs, and these things. How did you go about redefining that for yourself?
Honestly, it came from everything having the whole house having to crumble. It came from everything having to blow up and not having any choice to do anything except for that. So I'll say this. It started with me trying to come out. When I came out, I think my parents operated out of fear and love. Because I've learned this, when someone cares so much about what you're doing, it's because, they love you and they don't want to see anything bad happen to you. And one thing that my dad always told me is like, Des, you know, you get three strikes in life. Sometimes you already get one strike just for being a black person, two for being a male, three, for being gay. So you could potentially just strike out in life. And I think when my parents were afraid that I came out, it really just caused us to become estranged. So we went through this period of actually a long period of time of not really talking. And during that time when I didn't have the support of my family, I think back to my experiences of going to a historically black college. I went to Morehouse. That's the first time where, as my identity, I walked in and I had an idea of who I thought black people were. I had the idea of who I was, but then it was this, alternate universe. I went there, and for the first time, I saw that black people could be skaters, they could be punk rockers, they could be EDM rave people. They could be preppy, they could be, urban, they could be all these different things. They could also be royalty from Africa and speak French. I just came in and my mind was blown. And I saw more diversity within the Black community that I've ever seen in my life. So, one, that made me feel, you know, special. I said, you know what? My experience is a part of the Black community. Yes, I may be different than the peers that live down the street from me in Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio. But here at Morehouse, I've seen more diversity than I've seen in the entire world in one little space. So that's the first part. So that part of my identity starts to solidify, and I feel comfortable around that. And then by not having my family to kind of rely on, that's when other parts of my family step up. It's my grandparents, it's my aunts and my uncles, and then really pouring a lot of love into me. It's the experiences I had where, running in college became kind of toxic for me. So I stopped running my senior year, but started running again after a friend went through a traumatic experience. And my only way to try to help that person was to say, I feel like your recovery is going to be like a marathon. And you know what? I haven't run for almost a year, but there's a marathon this weekend, so I'm going to jump in it and we're just going to go. And then I think with that, I flew a little close to the sun. That marathon was one of the most painful things that I have ever done. Started off great, but at the end I was walking. But every single person that started passing me as I was running said words of encouragement and really said, hey, you can do this. Hey, run this next couple of steps with me. Hey, here's a goo block. Here's some electrolytes. So everybody pulled together to try to like pull me there. And I feel like that renewed my faith in the running community. And I saw um, what a light everybody in that race was. And I was like, I want to be that light. So combination of being at Morehouse, going through this really tough marathon, and then moving to a new place completely on my own again and not knowing anybody, I said, all right, this is my chance to become Des. I no longer have this this connection to Desmond anymore. I feel like I need to become something new. So with a combination of going to therapy, finding a new running group, showing up where no one knew who I was. No one knows my past. All they know is that I'm showing up. I'm gay. I'm black. I moved from Atlanta. I'm working on my PhD. That's all anybody knew about me. And I said to myself, like, the right people are going to be by my side and want to be my friend. And the people who don't want to be around are just going to make space for the people that do. So then I just told myself, like, all right, Des, like, it's going to maybe start a little bit lonely, but I think the right people are going to start gathering around you and will lift you up. And then that process, kind of like you, Jason, that took a long time. I will say, you know, maybe 2014 is when it turned around. And this might be kind of funny too. Um, at this time, what I did is I had a vision board on Pinterest. And what I was doing is I was pulling in all these affirmations and things that I needed to hear, things that would, build me up and things that would make me feel good about myself. So I pinned over 1,000 pins in 1 year, and it was all a vision board of like where I saw myself going and who I wanted to be.
Man, and there's so many parts that I told Jason I wanted to respond to it because I think I mirrored your experience of having the house of cards having to fall or everything to crumble before I had to come to grips with my own self of my job was my identity and the work that I did was my identity for 20 years. And where do you start when everything is gone and taken away from you in that moment? And the resounding thing that I heard in all of the aspects that you were talking about is, I don't know if you've heard of this term, value hunting. You were searching
Hmm.
for like all of these values and all of these things and all of these places that you were experiencing. You were seeing what you could be and what you wanted to be, and you're rebuilding your identity based on like who you want to be as a person, not what you do. Like, who are you as an individual? Like, are you generous? Are you kind? You want to help people? Like, who are you as a person? If you can make all your decisions and lean into everything based on your values, life becomes a lot clearer as to, like you said, the people that are going to stay, the people that are going to go, the people that want to be a part of that with you. So that's all I wanted to say on that. But I'm going to let Jason take the next question here.
I've got like 7 written down based on that last conversation piece.
It could have been a TED talk.
but the one thing that struck me, and I circled it really fast, was you said therapy and going to therapy as if it was just another conversation. Like, I'm going to go order a latte. Like, you just said it. And the stereotype is, right, men don't go to therapy. And so my wonder is, how hard was it for you to say, I'm going to therapy initially? And as each time you attended a session, did it get easier to say, I'm going to therapy, and be able to share that not just internally, right? Because you have to accept that you're going to therapy and break that norm initially, but then be able to tell somebody else, hey, I'm going to therapy and it's helped me, and maybe you should go too.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. I'll be honest, I was ashamed at first. I grew up in this household where what happens in the house stays in the house. And, come from a military family. So the way in which you show that you are strong is to just soldier on, is to just push through and to just push all those feelings down and to just do what you're supposed to do. But to be honest with you, none of that resonated with me. I said, if I, one, can't love myself, two, if I can't feel strong and stable within and feel confident in who I am, how am I going to be strong or love or connect with anyone? So for some reason that just, I said, you know what? I need an outside perspective. I don't know how to objectively look at all of this. So I need someone who went to school for this to give me the tools or to help me look at the tools in my tool belt, put everything on the table with no judgment and help me organize it. And the first time I went, I feel like I just dumped a ton of stuff on the table and I said, I don't know what to do with all this, but I'm just gonna unload everything on you. And then that person was awesome in that they took everything I put onto that table and they acknowledged the fact that they said, you are a very resilient and brave person for going through everything that you have gone through and for choosing yourself and actually wanting to put in the work because there's nothing weak about wanting to put in the work and wanting to show up in this world as the strongest version of yourself so that you can take care of yourself, your family, your loved one, your friends. Because if you're pouring from an empty cup, everybody's going to be dehydrated and parched, and it's not going to work. So yeah, it sucked at first, because I was scared and I had a lot of shame around the or feeling like I was weak or something, but for going to therapy. But the moment that I went there, I realized that that was not the case, and being vulnerable and doing that type of work is one of the strongest and most resilient things that you could ever do for yourself.
Having been to therapy myself, it is one of the most freeing things that you can possibly do for yourself, because then it does allow you to show up stronger for everybody else because you're no longer carrying this burden, right? This invisible burden that you've been carrying around so that you're unable to help others. But now that you've shed that weight and you've started to grow as a person, you're able to then turn around and tell somebody. And here's the thing that I want to emphasize the most. When you are able to shed your own weight and you tell somebody, "Let me know how I can help you," you actually mean it, right? There are people that will sign off on emails and hang up on a phone call and say, "Let me know how I can help you," and absolutely not mean it. It's just something to say that makes them feel good, right? But then when you actually ask them for help, they're like, "I can't do it. I can't make it. Sorry, that's out of this, that, that, and the other thing." But the person who has been able to release that burden, when they say, "How can I help you?" they actually mean it because they know help helps.
100%. It's one of the best investments that I have ever made in myself. That therapy started back in 2010, and it literally laid the groundwork for me becoming the person that I am now. And now when I go back to therapy, I feel like it's a spot check. Anytime that I'm like going, it helps me organize my thoughts. And even if I'm coming up with new goals, like one of the biggest things now is being able to set correct boundaries. I learned as an adult, you have all this incoming stimuli, and the more people you connect with, or if you build a family, you have porous boundaries. You are constantly available, but then you realize like you can't continue to give of yourself and not put something back into yourself. So I feel like therapy is one of those ways to just kind of keep you, afloat and keep your foundation strong.
Yeah, therapy is a funny thing. I consider myself a professional therapy goer, having been diagnosed with PTSD, depression, and anxiety from my career, and I'm sure other things as well too. But I'm curious from your perspective as an athlete, because this is the way that I went into it. And I've said this a few times before. I was trying to win at therapy. I am a very competitive person, and I thought just showing up and talking and showing up was like me winning. Like I'm doing this thing. But there's a difference between showing up and doing the work and letting go and surrendering and all of these pieces that come with it. And I also think that therapy doesn't only have to be for when you feel like you're broken. If everybody took this as like maintenance, and you went, like you said, now you're in this maintenance phase, you're in this spot check phase. If you took that for what that was, and if you were able to have done that, if I think back again, you talk about little Des, if I was a kid and my parents were like, we're just going to take you every 6 months to go talk to somebody to just make sure everything's okay. My goodness. Like, can you imagine how different life would be if that was there for everybody? So I just wanted to say that part, but I really wanted to talk to you about the mindset piece and really this idea of non-attachment, because
Mm,
you talked about it a lot. We've talked about it a lot together. And I would just love for you to share your philosophy on what non-attachment is and how it's allowed you to grow into the person that you are, because I think there's a huge growth piece to it, of being able to be detached from the outcomes and be detached from those things, but not detached and not like caring about them, but detached understanding that it's like I'm okay with either outcome and I have the tools to deal with either. So I'd love
yeah.
to just hear your philosophy on it.
I'm going to say this. This evolves. So when you blow everything up, it doesn't mean that the pieces aren't still around or like floating around with inside of you. So sometimes out of comfort and our egos and things like that, to try to make sense of things, we try to control different elements of things to try to make ourselves feel better, or it's like the path of least resistance. So for me, I had this attachment to how I should show up in this world. I have this attachment to, you know, what I should be doing by the age of 37. I have this attachment to, at work, like what stage should I be at work? How much money should you make? How fast should I be running this race? What should I be eating? So this word should is a dangerous word. We all think we should be doing all these different things, and the word should is a form of attachment. So one of the things I learned through therapy is that you don't have to do anything. You could want to do something, but you don't should, you don't have to should anything. So attachment to me is a form of control. So feeling like you need to control a different outcome or a certain outcome. So when you attach yourself to something, you are saying, this has to happen this way. I'm going to get anxiety, depression, or et cetera, if this outcome does not happen. So you're really fixated and ruminating on a certain outcome. Now, when you don't attach yourself to something, what you're doing is you're observing how things are unfolding. You have a goal, you're saying, I want this thing to happen, and you're putting the wheels in motion because you're getting yourself ready, but you're allowing yourself to go with the flow on how things unfold. You're allowing yourself to recalibrate. You're allowing yourself, like if a door shuts or doesn't open for a certain reason, instead of looking at it as an obstacle, you're actually looking at it as an opportunity. You're saying, all right, this door didn't open right now, even though I put in all the work, even though everything says that this should happen. I'm not attached or fixated to the fact that I want this to be the outcome. I'm taking this as a learning experience. I'm going with the flow, and I'm going to recalibrate and see what I need to do next to try to continue to get closer to this goal. That's kind of my philosophy on attachment. It's control versus going with the flow and being calculated and recalibrating.
I want to challenge you a little bit here, though. So,
Okay.
in today's world, we're all walking around with a phone. You can go on to Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is. And there is somebody there telling you, or everybody there telling you, you should be doing this, right? Here's what I've just done. And maybe they don't say this is what you should be doing, but you see that and the comparison game automatically comes in, right? And so you feel like I should be doing that. So how do you manage to disconnect this concept of should from the constant barrage of comparison opportunities?
Yeah, we live in a world where there's a lot of noise now. There's a lot of everyone has access to a phone. Everybody can share their opinion. So what I do is if I see something, because I'm on my phone too. If I see something and I'm intrigued by it, I'm looking at it, what I might do is I might write down, I want to do this. So an example, maybe I saw someone just go to Mexico City, running, eating all these amazing tacos, instead of being like, oh, like, man, I should be in Mexico City right now. Like, what am I doing? I'm just sitting here working. Like, man, things are bad. First thing I do is I write, I want to go to Mexico City. And then I look at this and then I might see, I think the thing that in the comparison trap, the way to get out of that is to say, all right, I'm right here. This person might be over here. We don't see everything that it took for that person to run that race, to get to Mexico City, to make that meal. We don't know any of the context that it took for somebody to get there. So it's unfair to your journey to say, I should be doing this, because maybe you're 3 steps back, or maybe you're ahead and you could actually do it right now. So I think the first thing is to say, I want to do this. So now it's a goal. But then you have to take a look at your journey and see where you are on your journey. So instead of getting caught up in a comparison loop, what I do is I just tell myself, yeah, I want to do this. And then I ask myself, do I have the resources right now to do it? Or what do I have to do to build it? And is it a priority right now? And if it's not a priority right now, I literally have, when I set goals, I have A, B, C, D. A is like immediate goal. B is like a nice to have goal. Like maybe I'll get there. C, not really a priority right now, but on my radar. D, this is, I might eventually get to this. This is a parking lot if you know, I eventually want to get there. So I just kind of prioritize, tell myself I want to do something, and then I honor where I'm at in my journey and I keep it moving.
I wrote down perspective, but there's another word that comes to mind as well, which is patience. And again, the world tells you the way the stories are told. If you open up a business today, you should be making $1 million, and here are the 7 steps to get to that spot, right? That's not patience. That's a lot of bullshit, in all honesty, to convince you that if you're not following these 7 steps, you're not going to make $1 million. When you write down your goals, are you writing down those goals with perspective and patience? And does that help you stay on track far better than not doing that?
Absolutely. Yeah, when I think that everybody's in this rat race right now, and everyone wants to make money. Everyone wants to be on top. Everyone wants to get the attention. We're kind of in this era of the subscription era where there's constantly things to automate things, to make something better, to hack something. And all of them are just trying to live their life and make money. So in order to do that, they have to get our attention. You have to create apps that engage us. You have to do things that are clickbait. You have to do things that get your attention. So people use this really strong language, but what they fail to do is say, okay, like maybe these were the 7 steps that ultimately helped me get there, but here's all my failures and my learnings along the way. And it actually took me 5 years to do that. But then once I failed for 5 years and did these 7 things in 1 year, then it kind of helped me do that, but with the foundation of 5 years of failure. So people are selling you the piece that is like the clickbait, but really what's underneath that is a whole root system. So they probably were patient too, but they're not patient in the fact that now they're ready to cash in on those 5 years of failure. So they need to sell it to us in a way that's going to get our attention. It's not going to get our attention if you tell me, yeah, you need to fail for 5 years. And then after maybe that, you might learn a few things, trial and error, and then it'll work. Everybody wants things to work quickly. We have a short life. So people are trying to make the most out of it. But to be honest, you can't do everything all at once. You have to prioritize, and some things take time. And really, it's about honoring the journey that you're on. And the thing that is the secret sauce is that journey and the lessons that you took along the way, because then they're going to be transferable to all these other different things you want to do in the future. So if you're rushing it, you're basically, screwing yourself. You're taking the secret sauce out. Where's the fun in that?
The phrase that popped into my mind that entire time that you were talking was they want the summit without the climb. That
Yes.
that to me is like you said, that secret sauce. Like, and it's no different than in training. Like, people want the podium, but they don't want to do the work that comes with it. They want these things, but they don't see all those underlying layers. Those, like, I call them, like, you have your summit goals, and then you have like your base camp goals. And your base camp goals are the things that lead to that summit. And if you're not focused on those things first in the process and all of those pieces, like, I feel like you're giving a lot away because you're trying to shortcut yourself. You're trying to get to that place faster, like you said, by doing these bigger things that people are telling you is going to fix everything for you. But to me, that takes the joy out of it. Like, how much more valuable to you would it feel hitting that summit if you knew you grinded it out, you did all these things, you did all this stuff to get you to that place? Like, to me, that is, like you said, the secret sauce. That's where the money is, and money is energy. Like, put your attention, energy is going to go there, and that it's going to be there if it's meant to be there for you. You can't force it, you can't control it, like you said before. So that's what it is for me. It's like they want the
Yeah.
summit without the climb.
And
Yeah.
the saying too, like, honestly, instant gratification feels really great until it doesn't. It's fleeting. You need multiple pings of instant gratification for it to last. And in fact, it doesn't last, because then you instantly need more. But delayed gratification and like being really proud of the journey that you've been on, and like arriving there and like thinking about the entire journey, that's a lifetime. That's a memory. That's an unlocked core memory.
And I want to add this, and before we move on to the next segment of the show, I go back to Des, what you said about people aren't going to share with you the 5 years of failures before they hit that success. And honestly, that is a disservice, right? Because we're now looking at this person's 1 year of success while we're failing, and we get frustrated, we get angry, we get stressed, we potentially quit, and we stop doing what we're doing because I haven't gotten to this process yet. I think young entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs in general, we would be better served as mentors and helping others by building in public. And it's something that we have taken pride in here at Run Try Bike, which is we're building in public. We've had failures left, right, and center. But when I mention the failures to some of the people that we talk to, I'm like, did you know that we used to do X? And they're like, no. I'm like, do you know that we used to do Y? And they're like, no. Right? It moved. The world moves so fast that the failure is going to be forgotten. But if you're building in real time and you're doing it publicly, the other person who reads what you're doing sees that you failed, they're going to continue on instead of thinking, well, these guys are awesome. They're doing it on the overnight success, which is just nonsense. There's one thing about building a business that frustrates me more than anything else, and it's this idea of overnight success. It just doesn't exist.
No, and I used to think that that was the way, like you don't want to fail, you want to avoid failure. I used to think that for the longest time. And now I'm like, you know what? I learned so much more from failure than an instant success. And I'm grateful. I have failed multiple times, and I've had to, crawl up the side of a house and make a window my entrance versus a door, because the door was not opening because I just kept failing. But you know what? Like, you just have to keep going, especially if something is for you and you know that you're just grinding towards something. Yeah, that delayed gratification is totally worth it. I mean, myself, I'm a product of delayed gratification. All this has been like brick by brick, while some, dilapidated structure was built, then I had to destroy it, and then I had to go source my bricks. I had to go source my mortar. I had to find my soil. I had to till my soil. I had to like lay my concrete. I had to start building it. I had to get a whole team because I couldn't do all this by myself. And now, I'm liking what I'm building. I'm finally on that track of like being proud of what I'm building.
Sounds to me like you're an HGTV fan like I am.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
We're running out of time, and we do this with every one of our guests. We have a segment of the show that's called Stop, Start, Continue, and it's based on the Japanese tradition of misogi. And at its core, misogi is about the transformation, so shedding old habits, beliefs, and ideas, embracing and letting in new and more powerful version of yourself while letting go and surrendering in order to grow. So we're going to be asking you these 3 questions, and we're going to follow up with you. So the first one is stop. If you had to choose one mental or emotional habit you want to leave behind this year, what would it be and why?
Self-sabotage. I think the reason I say self-sabotage is I think that, I have had moments of success, but sometimes when you're really doing something that feels unknown, it's easy to kind of revert back to a former version of yourself and say, I don't know if I deserve this, or, this version of myself doesn't deserve this. So I think sometimes an inner saboteur or that inner voice will tell you, yeah, you're not ready for this, or you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, or like you have more to do. So leaving that inner saboteur or self-sabotage behind is definitely something that I'm continuing to just wanting to stop.
Start. If you were to commit to a radical mental shift this year that would force you to grow in new ways, what would it be and why?
Doing more things that scare me and pushing me out of my comfort zone. One of those was doing the speed project. Actually, like a week or 2 ago, I know Evan has done that solo. I'm not quite there yet. I did it on a relay. That was a lot of fun, but scary. You're running through elements of the desert at 2:30 in the morning. You're not sleeping as much as you normally would, or eating as much as you normally would. So more things that scare me, push me out of my comfort zone.
And the last one is continue. If you had to symbolically cleanse or renew one aspect of your mental health in the next year, what would it be and why?
Leaning into more authenticity, just continuing to amplify my voice, continuing to help other people that feel stuck or don't feel seen or heard, grabbing them and helping them feel seen and heard.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, that voice inside your head, I like to call that my little liar. That's what I literally have, like an image of what that thing looks like, and it has a name, and it's like that therapy just does wonders when you get these little tips and tricks. And it's like anytime that pops up now, it's like that's just my little liar. I say its name to myself, and it's like it sounds weird, but it's like so reaffirming that it's like that's not my voice. And yeah, Speed Project is definitely an exercise in putting yourself into uncomfortable situations, I can't say. So Des, we want to thank you for your vulnerability and willingness to share pieces of your story with us today. Do you have any final thoughts, words of wisdom, or perhaps a story you want to leave us with?
Thank you so much, Evan and Jason, for having me on here. It's been a pleasure. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to chat with both of you. I've loved listening to both of your stories when you initially first started this podcast. So I'd say, anytime someone is just thinking about their mental health in general, I say, know that you're not alone. I think that we're taught as men to kind of sit with these complex emotions alone and not to be a burden to anybody and to hold on to these things by ourselves and to just be strong. But honestly, the strongest thing that you can do is to get a support system, to seek help, and to do things that help you channel that energy into good. So I think that that's just the main thing. My story is a story of, going through the motions, blowing it up, and then being intentional about my motions. And I just hope that other people can feel strong or an invitation to do the same.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So where can people connect with you on everything you're doing, from your coaching to your mentorship to your run clubs that you're a part of? Where can they find you, and what are you doing that you want people
Yeah.
to know about?
So this is an open invitation. If you were ever in the San Francisco Bay Area and you want to run on a trail, definitely shoot me a message on Instagram at Run Desi Run. You can also find me on Strava, Des Taylor Douglas. I organize a Twin Peak Tuesday run. If you're here on a Tuesday, I'm involved with the San Francisco Running Company. We run on Saturdays at 8 a.m. But I'm definitely happy to get you all plugged in, and yeah, always down to go for a trail run.
Awesome. Thanks, Des. So, on behalf of Jason and myself, we want to thank you for joining us on the Enduring Minds episode 8. We're a proud part of the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network, one of 9 incredible shows. Please subscribe, review, leave a comment, and rate the show, as it will continue to allow us to bring incredible guests like Des and their captivating stories to the Enduring Minds community. Jason and I have a little something new that's going to be coming out here. I think we're still figuring out timing, but it'll be the every other week to when we have our guests coming out. So watch for that. And our next guest episode will feature Michael Bridges on April 24th. Until next time, let's continue going the distance and breaking the silence together.